welcome everyone. It's always so good from the tax side to see how interested people are in how to improve their tax and financial stuff, and then also from the NDIS side where it's just really good to see that people want to make the most of so the funds they've got and see what other options they have. So that's a picture of my wonderful team, and it's growing all the time. And you can see it's all women, but we've just added a boy this week. So it's all very exciting for us. He's lovely. Okay, now, goodness me, how do I go to the next slide, Jan? Enter, no.
You should be able to just click the arrow on your computer.
Thank you, Jan.
Slide arrow should do it.
Great. Okay, so first and foremost, importantly, this is general advice only. This doesn't apply to your specific situation. Everyone's situation is individual. So just, make sure that you go and get your own specific advice related to your situation. So please consult a professional. And I guess when I say that, I'm talking about, talking to Fair Work, talking to a lawyer about an employment contract, talking to an accountant about how best to set this up. So today we're talking about the nuts and bolts of directly employing. So my name is Jane Hadrill. I have a small accounting firm in Mitchell, and I specialise in tax and accounting for small business and individuals. But since we started dipping our toes into the NDIS world 4 years ago, from a client who came to us and said, hey, we've got this thing called an NDIS plan, can you help us? So from then, we really started getting quite interested, and the NDIS side of the business certainly has more staff than the accounting side right now. So it's pretty exciting. So 3 years ago, Jan invited us to come to one of her seminars or meetings, and we did this presentation, but it's been markedly improved since then, to talk about this. And what I would comment and certainly have discussed with other people is that people just weren't ready. Like the NDIS as a scheme in and of itself was so new, kind of the Medicare of the disability world, that it was just too much to take on. So I think the time is right to start to consider other ways of engaging support workers to benefit you and to benefit your son or daughter from a range of aspects. So today I'm going to talk about the accounting and tax aspects of directly employing. I'm going to blow your minds with my mathematical skills, and feel free to pick holes and say I've made a mistake, because maths was never my strong point, sadly. Don't tell any of my clients that. And then Kirsten's my senior plan manager, and she leads the plan management team, and she leads it just beautifully and wonderfully. And certainly we have so many participants who comment on Kirsten specifically. So she's going to talk about directly employing in the context of the NDIS. Kirsten started out in the tax world with me, and so she's got that really good information and can apply that to what's happening in the NDIS world. So that's where we're starting. So what I'm hoping that you can get out of this today is, the definition of directly employing. What does it actually mean? What benefits you might gain from directly employing? How much could you save from doing this? And then I have a whole lot of slides on the specifics of actually how to go and do it, which we may not get into those weeds, because I think at this stage it's more about people deciding, yep, I'm going to give it a go or not. So what is directly employing? So there are a number of options available right now to engage support workers, and I suspect that all of you are using some or all three of them at the moment. So you can use a disability agency such as Catholic Care or Quest Care. You can use self-employed contractors who have their own ABN, or you can directly employ. So choosing the option that best suits you will depend on a whole range of factors, including availability of personnel and ease of engaging them. I think most important though is that you can engage support workers using a combination of those three things. So for example, Catholic Care can provide someone to assist you with domestic care such as showering, dressing, eating. You can pay a contractor with an ABN to mow the lawns, and you can directly employ a support worker to assist with access to community, social and recreational activities. Each method of engaging a support worker has its own pros and cons. But today, the focus is talking about directly employing and the benefits of doing that. So I wanted to hand over to Kirsten now to talk about why you would decide to directly employ.
Thanks, Jane. Hi, can everyone hear me? Yep, great. Okay. So why would you directly employ staff? There's lots of reasons. For me, I think the number one reason is that directly employing gives you the ability to employ the best staff member. And I'm saying when I talk your son or your daughter, but your person, really, whoever has the NDIS plan, we want to get the best staff member possible. So with directly employing, you have a great chance of having invested, loyal and dedicated staff. It gives you the ability to employ a support worker who, number one, has a desire to, and number two, is really interested in working with the person in a meaningful way. So really a person who wants to build capacity, relationships and strong connections with the person that needs the support and with the family that surrounds them. It gives you as the employer the ability to discuss in detail with your staff goals, interests, desires and barriers that your son or daughter may have. And it also gives you the ability to introduce innovative ways of having supports delivered to your person. Jane, is there a slide that you can click down? There we are. Okay. So I just addressed there, I think, number one, choose the best match. So get the best person to support you. The second great reason for directly employing is it gives you the ability to cast a really wide net when you're looking for staff. So instead of just recruiting staff from a support agency, you can look at more interesting places. So you might know someone who has a friendship or a connection with your son or daughter, and they may not be interested in working for a support agency. So that would be somebody that you could directly employ. It could be a neighbour, it could be a therapy assistant, it could be somebody's big brother that has a rapport with the person that's needing support. So directly employing means that you can really think carefully about the type of support that your person needs and then match the support worker directly to that need. Another great benefit is being able to have staff on board who are invested and valued. So instead of staff feeling that their roles are not important, meaningful or valued, you can have an employee connected directly to you, and it gives the opportunity for real investments in the supports that they're providing. So we know from people that we've assisted to directly employ that the connection between staff and family is a really strong and invested connection. It also gives staff who are directly employed by you, it gives them a really clear and easy way to provide feedback and suggestions. So there isn't a barrier of a third party or an agency that says, no, you know, you must report back to us and then we'll provide a report to the family. So you've got that sort of direct ability to discuss openly and frankly what the person being supported, what they're you know, how to best benefit them. Okay. If you directly employ staff, you get the opportunity to tailor supports rather than just having sort of cookie cutter supports. So by that I mean, I guess, sometimes staff that are coming from a support agency feel that their roles are set in stone, so that they arrive with clear instructions from their employer about what they can and cannot do. and they might arrive with just a very sort of narrow range of what they're going to do to support a person. A good example would be that a support worker from an agency arrives and says, okay, it's Thursday today, so today's the day that we go to the shops, we do some shopping, we come home. But if you're directly employing, you could have talked to your support worker about building capacity, and maybe the person being supported is interested in cooking. So it could be, let's look online, let's find a recipe to cook, let's put together our list of ingredients, go to the shops, come back, cook a meal. And directly employing gives you the opportunity to be discussing that directly with the support worker. In this way, staff are able to naturally provide capacity building, interesting and supports that are tailored directly to the person. That flows on, I think, really nicely to ease of making arrangements. So instead of needing to call a support agency to discuss shift times, you've got the opportunity to be able to talk directly to your support worker and really setting out supports that are going to suit the family and the support worker. And additionally, you've got that ability to discuss at short notice any important factors relating to your person. So if it was a difficult morning and emotions are running high, you don't need to call the support agency first to say, I want to relay this information along. You've got a really clear line of communication. Finally, value for money, which is also really important. It gives you the ability to provide your employee with attractive wages and conditions rather than them simply picking up minimum wage. You're not using your funds to pay a support agency the maximum hourly rate, which they can charge using the NDIS price guide. Instead, you have an attractive hourly rate for your employee and still having potential to make a savings benefit. So if we talk, I'll try to skim over it. I guess you would all be aware that when a planner puts together a plan, they use a variety of information, but the end result is funds in a budget. And I guess today we're talking more about the core supports budget. So the core supports budget's got funding in it for assistance with daily life, assistance with social and community activities, and maybe some consumables sitting there. So the planner will fund you for a certain amount of hours per week or per year, and then it goes as a dollar value. So at the moment for weekday supports, the price guide tells us $54.30 per hour. So if you were funded for 5 hours in your core budget per week, the support agency would take the full component of that, so $54.30 per hour. If you're directly employing, you're paying your staff member still a really attractive salary, but the cost is less. So you have the potential there for savings in your hourly rate, which you can then use to fund the other expenses related to directly employing staff. So I know Jane's going to talk more about that, and I'll leave you to do that, Jane.
Thanks, Kirsten. So before we crunch the numbers, which I think is one of the most interesting parts of this, so we can, broad brush it and say, well, we're paying a different hourly rate, but what does that actually look like when you add on all the on costs which are associated with it? So I just wanted to first of all explain the difference between a contractor and an employee. So let's put the agency support workers to the side for the moment. So the end result is similar. They're there to do what you want them to do. And I think that's perhaps at times a key difference to what the agency wants them to do, which is turn up on time and then leave on time. But a subcontractor, and you can kind of call them variously an ABN, a subcontractor, they'll have their own ABN, their own public liability insurance. They should have the National Police check and screening for working with vulnerable people and a first aid certificate. And I strongly recommend that anyone who's considering employing an ABN or subcontractor actually checks that. So, you can easily say that you've got a first aid certificate, but is it up to date? So I think that that's really important comment to make. If you go through an agency, of course, they're going to have it. If it's any decent agency, they'll check those regularly. A subcontractor will determine the price for their services. An employee, you will determine what is appropriate to pay them. Now, one would think that paying less than an agency would not be appealing to a potential staff, a support worker. And I know at the moment one of the agencies in Canberra pays $35.15, I think. So that's what the ballpark you're looking for. You wouldn't want to be paying much less than that because you wouldn't have much interest. So a subcontractor will do the work and they will invoice you. And I just want Kirsten to talk briefly here about directly employing people and what award they're employed under, which is the SHADS award, and what that actually means compared to employing an ABN or going through an agency.
Thanks, Jane. Okay, so the Fair Work Ombudsman looks at all employment conditions in Australia, and they've confirmed that if you're employing somebody as a support worker using NDIS funding, that person qualifies as a home care employee under, we call it the SHADS award. So the SHADS award's the Social, Community, Home Care and Disability Services industry. So the SHADS award tells us the minimum pay rates for home care employees, and it does it as a classification based on job description. So for an employee with less than 12 months experience in the industry and who has work activities that are routine and clearly defined, the SHADS award says the appropriate pay rate's $26.69. Which is obviously quite low. So the employee levels keep going up until you get to level 5, where an employee is expected to be accountable for coordinating resources, accountable for quality, effectiveness, cost and timeliness with skills and knowledge. And then that hourly rate, again, quite low, $33.76. So the SHADS award is setting our minimum baseline. And then we know that we're confident to pay above that rate based on negotiations with potential staff members.
I think that the component that's missing from that, though, is certainly the employees that I know that work for various agencies, they're paid as casuals. So they're paid at 25% loading. So if someone's starting out on $25, here's my maths, you'd add another $5, $6 onto that, so their rate would be $31. So if someone's getting $35 at an agency, it means they're starting out about $28. So the other important aspect is that you need to pay business insurance and workers' comp insurance, and I'll include that in the crunch the numbers calculation I'm going to do next. But one real anomaly in this whole situation is that even so if you're an agency employed support worker, I don't think they're employed under the SHADS award. Kirsten, are they employed under the SHADS award?
I believe they are. Disability Services Industry is the SHADS award. So Social, Community, Home Care and Disability Services Industry.
So the reason I question that actually is because certainly the employees I know are being paid the 9.5% super contribution. So the general rule is that if you earn more than $450 over a calendar month, your employer must pay 9.5% super. But then employees under the SHADS award are very discriminated against, I think, in that they have to earn more than 450, but they also have to work more than 30 hours a week. So if they earned $500 a calendar month, but only did 20 hours a week, which, okay, would be pretty poor pay rate, but putting that aside, they wouldn't get the 9.5 SGC. So it's interesting because the agencies I know are pretty damn scummy when it comes to paying their employees, but they're paying. So that would be something else you would negotiate with your directly employed staff. Like, do you pay them super even though there's no requirement to pay them super, or do you decide not to? Okay, so let's jump to the number crunch. Can everyone see the numbers on the side, Jan, with this as well? Not that there are any numbers on the side with this slide, but the next slide, it's important. I'll leave that to you to determine. Maybe it's at the top here where you can decide how you want to see. Oh, there we go. You can just hide everyone else watching if you want to see the full slide, which you will need to once we get to the numbers. So what I'm wanting to compare is an agency support worker with an ABN contractor with a directly employed staff member. So in order to compare the apples with apples, I'm saying that each shift is for 4 hours. There are 200 hours per annum that you, as the participant or participant parent, is paying. There's 30 minutes travel to the shift start, but we are ignoring the kilometres in the shift because it's the same dollar result. Well, under the SHADS award, you don't have to pay the 85 cents a kilometre, which is required under the NDIS price guide because it's the SHADS award. So there's lots of inconsistencies, but let's keep it at 85 cents. So if we look at an agency support worker on the left-hand side here, so the hourly rate for an agency, the hourly rate that you pay the agency to have a support worker could be up to $54.30 as per the price guide for that work. So 4 hours would be $217. 30 minutes travel to shift. The agency, are probably charging you, but probably not passing on to the staff member, $27.15. And you can also claim, and this has created much debate in the office here amongst the plan management staff, that the agency can also charge you not only the 30 minutes travel to the shift, but also the cents per kilometre for the travel to the shift. We're not talking travel inside the shift, we're talking to get to the shift. So this is if the agency is going for every dollar. So the total for one shift then adds down to $261. Hopefully that makes sense to people. Happy to share these slides after. The annual spend there, 50 shifts at 4 hours each, is going to be $13,067.50. Compare that to an ABN contractor. So we're saying possibly they might charge 80% of the NDIS rate. And again, that's between you and them to negotiate. For a 4-hour shift, you would pay them $173. I would encourage any ABN contractor to charge the 50% travel to get to the shift. They could also charge the cents per kilometre because they are as per the price guide as well. So total for one shift is $195, annual spend is $9,774, a saving of $3,293. So to me, that's the biggest difference between agency and ABN contractor. And I guess it comes back to, do you get the same degree of loyalty and commitment from an ABN contractor as you would do an employee? So we'll go to the next slide. So a direct employee under the SHADS award, the hourly rate, I'm just picking a figure, could be what this agency that I know of in Canberra pays, plus 44 cents per hour for first aid. Now you can elect not to pay a per hour rate for first aid. And in my situation as an office, if someone came along with a first aid certificate, I'd say, well, that's lovely for you, but you're not the nominated first aid officer. But if you're comparing to an agency, that's what you would be paying, the plus 44 cents an hour. So 4 hours, $145. I'm saying you'd pay super at 9.5%, even though they might not, or unlikely to meet the 30-hour a week super working hours to get super. Insurance per annum, look, it's a moving feast, and it depends on how many hours employees are doing, how much you're paying them. But let's just throw $1,500 into the mix. Aon is the major insurer for this arena, but I mean, I'm sure that Jan has got other options for you to at least ask for quotes for to see what they're like. So what I've done there is I've said $1,500 divided by 200 works out to be about, and for 4 hours of that works out to be $30 for every 4-hour shift, if you can follow. So it's an imperfect science, because what I'm saying is I want to break it down to a 4-hour shift cost. So $30 per 4-hour shift if there's 200 hours per year. And I'm throwing in something else there as well, that certainly self-managed people that I've talked to have said that direct employing suits them, but the ongoing timesheets, pay slips, monthly, quarterly instalment activity statements is just too onerous to manage. So I've looked at what someone could charge to do that bookkeeping per month, and I'm thinking $160, therefore $3.20 per hour. So the total for one shift therefore becomes $192, the annual spend $9,600. So just to remind you of those numbers, agency to ABN, big difference. Not such a big difference between ABN and direct. So really you would look at the benefits of directly employing being loyalty and commitment, perhaps more. So that was such an interesting exercise for me to do to get to that point. So I'm hoping that others have found that useful. And as I say, I'm awfully happy if someone says that's not right. But anyway, I'm just going to come back up so I can see people's beautiful faces. There we go. It's hard to talk to a screen at times. So I wanted to get some common questions out of the way. Just because you're employing domestic workers does not make you a business. There's no tax return required. You're not paying tax on anything, obviously, because you're not getting any income. I mean, NDIS funds are not taxed. So you don't have an ABN, you don't require an ABN, you don't apply for an ABN. So the ABN is an Australian business number, you don't have a business. Likewise, even if your plan funds are over 75,000, because you're not a business, because you're not paying tax on those funds, you don't register for GST. So just wanted to make that very clear from the start. So if that's the case, what do you do? How do you employ staff? Now this next slide is going to blow you all away. It's so exciting. Oh, no, wrong keyboard. Oh, I've even got them all here. Maybe I'll go up and do them one by one. So you don't need an ABN, but you do need a way of communicating to the ATO that you are employing staff. And the way you do that is you apply for a withholding payer number, a WPN. And if you had, not even in the NDIS space, if you had an ongoing gardener that didn't want to be an ABN or didn't want to go through, Jim's mowing or whatever, you could also directly employ them doing this. So you apply for a WPN. Kirsten, are we applying for WPN in the name of the participant or the participant's family?
Best to apply in the name of the participant because the participant has the NDIS funding, and we know that NDIS also says that that participant should have a bank account in their name that is solely for managing the NDIS funds. So yes, in the person with the plan's name.
Okay, so we might talk about that again separately, because certainly in our pack of information it says it should be in the person's name who looks after the funds, and I do believe we had a case that it was applied for in the name of the participant and it created all sorts of problems because they were under 18 and so forth. So let's pursue that later, although I would certainly bow to Kirsten's much more detailed knowledge of the NDIS than mine. I can't even do maths, so hey. Okay, so you apply for the withholding payer number. That in and of itself is not difficult. Whoops. You obtain the relevant insurances. So you need to do this at the outset. You certainly don't want to be employing people without workers' compensation. So workers' compensation is that if someone is injured in the workplace, whether it is riding a bicycle around Lake Burley Griffin with your son or daughter, then workers' comp will cover ongoing income to that person. Now, if you're employing them for 4 hours a week, then that's all it's going to reimburse you for. Curiously, perhaps not for you lot, but certainly for my small business clients, if you have a workers' comp claim, your workers' comp insurance goes up phenomenally. And it is based on the amount of wages that you pay. So there is a minimum workers' comp that you'll be paying. Meet work health and safety obligations. And is this providing the employee with a reporting form if something goes wrong? Is this telling them where the first aid kit is in the house? Preparing a letter of engagement, providing a fair work statement. Now, all of these, certainly we have as pro formas, which we can provide. So don't be overwhelmed and thinking, my God, I've got to come up with something new. You certainly don't have to. There are these templates around. You have to provide the employee with a tax file number declaration that will give the details that you'll need to include on the pay slips and when you submit the monthly or quarterly BAS to pay the wages tax. See, my eyes are glazing over about yours. You've got to pay the super or not pay the super, depending on what you decide. You have to calculate the tax to withhold each fortnight or each month you decide to pay. You have to actually pay the employee. You then pay the tax to the ATO quarterly, and you prepare the annual payment summary. So because we're all, grown-ups and we've worked in the world for a while, lots of this stuff will be familiar. Fair work statement may or may not, tax file number declaration, paying the super. And what I've discovered after discussing with a couple of people, I mean, this is fairly overwhelming for me, even just to look at this list. Where do you start? I feel strongly that, this is my opinion of the world, I feel strongly that anyone who is thinking of directly employing should be doing, they can't abrogate these responsibilities. You need to apply, you need to obtain, you can't get an agent to go and do this for you. You've got to meet, so you really need to understand a letter of engagement or a job description. You need to embrace that. You need to be fully on board. Fair work statement. Even though we or another accountant or someone could provide you with the templates, you still need to go through and understand. Provide tax file, meet super obligations. But from about 7 to 0.7 down, do you need really to calculate the tax to withhold to pay the ATO? I mean, you're not an accountant. How long is it going to take you to get your head around that, and do you have to? What's really curious, and again, being in tax world, comparing this to NDIS world, every other employer in Australia has to use what's called STP, single touch payroll. But because, and Kirsten made this really relevant comment, they just don't know what to do. The ATO do not know what to do with withholding payer number employers. They're not going to use single touch payroll. What are they going to use? So we've got an extension of time until 30 June 2021 to do it in a much simpler fashion than the rest of the world of business. So I have, clicking wrong. I have, these slides about obtaining a workers' comp, public liability, looking after your employee. But I think that it would be more useful now, perhaps, to go back to questions rather than talking about the specifics of how you go about doing it. One thing I've contemplated is, if anyone is interested in doing all of the detail, then I could run, say 2-hour Zoom sessions over 2 weeks about, okay, what forms do we fill in? How do we get them? What do we do? Whereas I think the detail here is probably not necessary. There we go. What else have I written here? So lots of other detail, but I think at that juncture, Jan, it would be probably more useful if people have got questions to ask them.